Well, good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi et tous, et bienvenue. Welcome to this special Distinguished Speakers Series webinar, which is presented through a partnership by the Chamber of Commerce for Greater Moncton, the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce, and the St. John Region Chamber of Commerce. My name is John Wishart, and I'm the CEO of the Greater Moncton Chamber, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this virtual event. I would also like to welcome my colleagues and friends from the other two chambers, CEO Krista Ross from the Fredericton Chamber, and Dean Mullen, who is the chair of the board of directors for the St. John Region Chamber. It's always great to work with these two chambers on joint presentations which benefit all of our members. So as everyone on this Zoom call knows, we are now 20 months into COVID-19 and its impacts on our business communities. But there's another challenge which threatens to stall an economic recovery. Today's presentation, The Great Canadian Labor Crunch, How to Adapt to the Labor Shortage Situation, is perfectly timed to get to the root causes, the current state, and the future of labor in our province and our country. Now, labor shortage is not a new phenomenon in Canada, but as the economy recovers and the job market bounces back, the pressure on employers is immense as they struggle to find the workers they need. Many business owners have no choice but to work more hours, perhaps to delay or refuse orders. But what are the causes of the labor shortage and how long will it last? With us today to lead us through the labor crunch discussion is one of Canada's foremost economists and business leaders, Pierre Cleroux, Vice President Research and Chief Economist for BDC. Pierre will share with us BDC's latest research on labor shortages and propose some ways entrepreneurs can cope with this new reality. So Pierre, your annual visit to our chambers, either in person or in the last couple of years virtually, is always a highlight for our members. Here is how today's presentation will unfold. Following my introduction, Pierre will deliver his presentation, which will be followed by a Q&A section moderated by Krista Ross. The hour will end with some closing comments by Dean Mullen. I want to let everyone know you can post a question at any time during the presentation by using the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Je veux que tout le monde sache que vous pouvez poser une question à tout moment pendant la présentation en utilisant la fonction questions et réponses au bas de l'écran Zoom. There are about 170 people registered for this event, so we expect plenty of great questions based on Pierre's presentation, and we will get to as many as time allows. I would like to thank BDC for their great support for today's event. They have long been great partners for all three of our chambers, and we continue to value that partnership. So, without further delay, it's now my pleasure to turn the platform over to today's guest speaker, Pierre Cleroux.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen, so just give me 2 minutes. So everybody should see my screen now. So like John said, the pandemic, well, the recovery after the pandemic is well on the way. The Canadian economy has recuperated all the job lost during the first part of the pandemic. And now the growth continues. And what we are seeing is that the biggest challenge that we're going to face is now the shortage of labor. So my presentation has 3 parts. First, I'm going to talk about why. Why do we have so much difficulties to recruit people? Second, I'm going to talk about the impact on entrepreneurs. And third, I'm going to present strategies. We just released a report and we look at more than 1,200 companies across the country. We were interested to see what are the best practices. So I'm going to summarize that at the end of the presentation. So in order to do this research, we interview more than 1,200 entrepreneurs across the country. We also interview about 3,000 Canadians because we wanted to have also the other point of view, the point of view of employees. So the result of these 2 analyses are presented in the following presentation. So why is it so difficult to hire people? Well, the biggest issue we have, or really the cause of this situation, is the fact that our population is aging. The graph that you see present the median age in Atlantic provinces. The numbers will be very similar in Canada. So in 1971, we had a very young population. The median age was 24 years old. Now we are at 46 years old. So the baby boomers who were young in 1971, well, they're getting older. And because they're getting older, a lot of Canadians are thinking about retiring. Actually, the number of Canadians that are going to retire in the next 5 years is be counted in millions. So this is the reason a lot of Canadians are close to 65 or over 65. So a lot of Canadians are leaving the job market. So to show you the impact of this is, we're looking at the labor force, and here the numbers are for the Atlantic provinces, the 4 provinces. So basically the labor force is the total population between 15 and 64. And as you can see, the labor force used to increase a little bit every year, but now it's actually slowing down. It's slowing down because so many people are leaving the workforce to retire, and not enough young people are entering the workforce. So this is a unique phenomena. This is the first time in Canada we experience that. We're not the only one. The situation is similar in other developed economies. That's the case in the US, in Germany, in France, in the United Kingdom. And actually, that's the case also in Japan. Japan was the first country to experience an aging population. So Canada now and the European countries are facing a similar issue. So to see really the impact is I compare here the labor supply that you see in blue. That's basically the population between 15 and 64. And in red, you see the level of job that we have. And these are, again, is for Atlantic Canada. So over a period of 10 years, the number of people between 15 and 64 has actually been declining. So a lot of people are over 64 now, 65 and plus. And the number of jobs in the region has been increasing. So you see the gap has been building. So this is not a new phenomena, but the phenomena started probably 5 or 6 years ago. So you can see that the gap is building. That's the reason why entrepreneurs have so many difficulties to recruit people and to retain their people. There's a good news here, and the good news is on the people side. A lot of people are finding a job, people who had difficulties to find a job in the past because maybe they had low skills or they had just difficulties to find a job. Well, it's going to be much easier now. Also, governments who have been focusing on programs to help the economy to create jobs, well, the unemployment rate is going to go down just because of demography. I don't know if you remember, but just before the pandemic, the unemployment rate was going down in every province in the country. And in Canada, we had the lowest unemployment rate in 40 years. But the good news on one side is also very difficult for businesses. And on top of it, the pandemic made things worse. It made things worse in 2 ways. The first way, it's slowed down immigration. In Canada, immigration dropped by half in 2020 because of the restriction caused by the pandemic. If we look at the different provinces in the region, for example, in New Brunswick that you see in green, in 2019, New Brunswick was accepting 7.7 permanent resident for every 1,000 inhabitants. Now, in 2020, this number dropped by half. This is not unique. It's the same situation in every province. But this is showing you that in a context where we have an aging population, it's difficult to recruit people. Well, the level of immigration is slowing down because of the pandemic. It's going to be similar in 2021. And from 2022, we believe that the immigration numbers are going to come back to normal. But we're kind of losing 2 years. In Canada, we figure that we're missing about 400,000 people in those 2 years that are not coming to the country because of the pandemic. The second reason why the pandemic was difficult on this is because 20% of workers who lost their job during the pandemic, they changed actually from a sector to another. The first people to lose their job at the beginning was in accommodation and in the food industry, also in retail, because the restrictions imposed by different governments, these sectors were really affected. There's actually 3 million people in Canada who lost their job. Well, 20% of workers have decided to move to another sector because other sectors reopen faster and also because there was opportunity to work in other sectors. So this is making things worse for some sectors of our economy, retail, everything related to tourism. So there's no doubt that the shortage of labor is real and is the root cause is demography. We have an aging population, so this situation is going to stay with us for a while. What is the impact on entrepreneurs? Well, 55% of Canadian entrepreneurs have difficulties to hire people, and 26% have difficulty to retain their own employees. So the situation, these numbers are record high. We never had such a high number. The number were high before the pandemic, but this is even higher now. And there's a risk for businesses and also for the economy. Because when we look at the impact on entrepreneurs, we can see that one of the biggest impact is it's limiting the growth of businesses because people doesn't have the manpower to accept new clients or, for example, to accept a new contract or to export. 69%, so that's a huge number. So if a lot of businesses have to limit their growth, well, this is going to limit the growth of the economy as well. 73% of entrepreneurs are saying that they have to work more. Also, many of their employees have to work more because they cannot find people. 59% are saying that they have to increase salary and benefits. Actually, when we look overall of the economy, we can see that salaries in Canada has been increasing by 7% since over the last 12 months. That's huge. Usually salaries are increasing by 1 or 2%, close to inflation. So now 7% is much bigger. And the two sectors where we're seeing that salaries are increasing the most are actually retail and technology. So retail is including restaurants and also the accommodation sector, everything related to tourism. So this is where we see the salaries increasing the most, and also everything related to technology, so people who work in tech. 26% are saying that they have difficulties to meet orders. So the impact on many businesses is very real. And this situation is not unique to the Atlantic province. It's actually across Canada. Everywhere in Canada, we have a similar situation. Situation is a little bit worse in Quebec. There's less mobility in Quebec, an aging population that is a little bit more accentuated than in the rest of the country. But basically, the numbers are very similar. In every part of Canada, we have this similar issue about shortage of labor. Some sectors and some regions have more difficulties. That's the case of smaller city. And the reason for that is, as you know, a lot of young people leave their small city to go to study in a bigger city and they never come back. Also, immigration, they tend to stay in a bigger city, bigger center than going into a small city. On the sector side, well, where we find that it's more difficult, it's a wholesale and retail trade. So like I said, many people who lost their job, they have decided to work in another sector. So it's more difficult to recruit right now in retail. It's also the case in accommodation and food services, and also truck drivers. A lot of people decided to do something else. As you know, it's very demanding to be a truck driver. You're never home. So it's very difficult to recruit a truck driver right now. But it's also very difficult to recruit in other sectors. Manufacturing, there's thousands of jobs missing in manufacturing. Technology, definitely, it's probably the sector that is the most impacted. There's a strong demand for technology. So businesses who are offering technology services have difficulties to recruit. Even professional and business services have difficulties to recruit right now. So finally, what is the best strategy? Well, that's the reason why we did this study. We wanted to better understand what companies across the country are doing in terms of facing this challenge and what are the best strategies. So what they are doing is basically a lot of businesses are offering more flexible work arrangement to retain their people or to attract new employees. They train internally. So when people need to hire somebody with more skills, well, because they cannot find them, they will look inside their company and train them to make them, they look inside their own worker to make sure that they find the right people. Also, they recruit younger workers and they work with them, they coach them, they train them because it's people who are just out of school have often more difficulties to find a job. So that's basically what most entrepreneurs are doing. We find that in our research that although these strategies are good, the best one are the four that you see on the screen. And I'm going to take them one by one. So first, technology has been proven as the most efficient strategy for people who are facing shortage of labor. Use a formal hiring process. Third, offer a total compensation package that is competitive. And fourth is to expand our hiring pool, is to look at the job market differently. So let's look at each of them. Like I said, in our research, we find that companies who are investing in technology and automation, they actually are the one who perform the most in terms of revenue growth, and they are the one who have the easiest way to face this challenge of shortage of labor. When we talk about automation, we often think about the manufacturing sector, but actually technology has really improved, really changed. So we can use technology in every sector of our economy to reduce our need for workers. Technology doesn't replace people, it does replace tasks inside companies. So the use of technology or automation, it's a good way to replace some tasks and free up some time for our employees. Like I said, we often think about manufacturing when we talk about automation, but in our research that we produce, we give a great example about the service sector. And in this case is a drugstore. Well, the small drugstore, there were only a few employees. The pharmacist couldn't find a technician during the pandemic. So they decided to buy a machine that was able to process prescriptions. And they realized that this machine was actually very efficient. And this machine doesn't make mistakes, which is very important when you prepare a prescription. So this example is just to show you that it's not all, you don't need to have a large businesses to be able to find technology that is going to help you as an owner and to replace your need for workers. You can do it now in almost every sector of the economy as technology has really improved over time. The second strategy, and that might surprise you, is to use a formal hiring process. We realized in our study that 77% of businesses have no formal hiring process. Actually, in most cases, is the owner himself or herself who just recruit towards their networks. Well, that might have worked in the past, but now with this war of talent where everybody is looking to hire people, well, the companies who are more successful, even a small company, they have a more formal, more organized hiring process. They have a job description. They advertise on social media where a lot of people are looking for a job these days. They also market their company as a good employer. As you know, we all market our companies for our products and services that we offer. But in this new reality where there's a war for talent, it's important also to market our business as a good employer. If you don't do that, people will tend to be attracted by other businesses who are presenting themselves or selling their companies in a better way. So this is very important, is to have a formal hiring process, is to market our companies as a good employer. This is really helping in this current situation. The third is to look at our compensation package. And here I use compensation package and not salary, because the first action often is to increase salary, which could work. But a lot of people are looking beyond the salary. So they are looking for benefits, they're looking for flexible work arrangement. The pandemic have changed that. A lot of people would like to work more from home. So if it's possible, it's not always possible, but if it's possible to offer the ability to work from home few days a week, that goes a long way for many people. Train them, monitor them, offer them the ability to do more than what the employee used to do. I was talking to a client in the construction sector who offer a participation to profit to his employees because he's not able to retain them. So that's for him, that's a great way to retain his employees, by offering some strategy or some way to share the profit. So finally, the fourth is to look at the job market in a different way. We have difficulties to recruit people. The unemployment rate is going down, but at the same time, some group of our society have difficulties to find a job. That's the case of young workers. And that's, as I showed before, more and more companies are hiring younger people with no experience, and they're taking the time to help them to get the experience inside their company. Everybody wants to hire somebody with 10 years of experience. But in this new context of the labor force, we have to think differently. And hiring younger people and train them, that's one way to do it. Retired people, more and more Canadians want to work over 65. We live longer, we are in better shape, life is expensive. So a lot of Canadians want to work, but they might want to work only a few days a week. So this is another pool of workers to look at. Finally, and this is very important, the unemployment rate for immigrants is still higher, and in some provinces much higher than for non-immigrant. So there's also a pool of workers, people who came to Canada to build a life, and this is really something that we should look at. So the message, there's 4 solutions here, then I'm sure there's other solutions as well, but the key message is the shortage of labor is with us for a long period of time. We're not going to solve this in the next few months, because the baby boomers are going to live the job market for the next 5 years. So as businesses, we have to find long-term solutions. Every business is different. Every business model is different. So the solution will be different for every business. But it's important to think about the long-term solution. So in conclusion, the recovery is really coming back pretty quickly. The demand for our products and services is really increasing. And we believe that the growth of the economy is going to be quite solid for the end of this year and also for 2022. So at the beginning of the pandemic, the challenge was the demand, because we had so many restrictions on our economy, because consumers were thinking, they were uncertain about the economy. Now the demand is shifting, is really increasing. Now the problem we have is the supply, is the difficulty to provide the products and services that our consumers are demanding. Many companies have a supply chain issue. These supply chain issues should actually disappear as we move away from the pandemic. What is going to stick with us is the shortage of labor. This is a long-term issue, so we need to find long-term solutions. Like I said, there's no perfect solution. Unfortunately, there's a number of different solutions according to your business model. So I'm going to stop here. Before I go, I just wanted to introduce 2 persons. Nadine Leblanc and Tony Gamble are 2 business person that work at BDC that can help you for your need on investment or on your need for borrowing. So if you need any help for BDC, don't hesitate to have a contact with Nadine Leblanc or Tony Gamble. So I'm going to stop here, and we have plenty of time for questions. I would be happy to take your questions.
Thank you so much, Pierre. That was a really great presentation, and certainly some things that we have been hearing, but you actually put numbers to it. And with the survey that you did, that really quantifies some of the information we've been hearing. So the questions are rolling in. The first question I want to ask you, it relates to the hiring of immigrants and newcomers. Do you think there's hope of improving credential recognition situation in Canada?
It's a very good question. It really varies from one province to another. Some provinces are more open to that than others. It's not an easy problem, because at the same time that you want to help people who are coming to Canada to be recognized for their study abroad, at the same time, we have in Canada very high standards. So it's a question of helping them to make sure that they have the right credential for Canada. So the situation is very different to one place or another, but that's definitely a solution to look at in the context where we're looking for more people, especially more specialized people.
Thank you. Another question, you mentioned the hiring of youth and people with less experience. So one of the challenges our small business members generally have is that there's less capacity to take on inexperienced workers and train them on the job. So is the trend that you talk about of companies hiring individuals without experience skewed more towards larger employers?
Actually, not right now. And this study is showing, for the first time, we see that the percentage of businesses who are hiring younger people and train them, it's really moving up. That's something that was always there. Companies have been doing this for a long time, but now we're really seeing more and more people doing it, and we see it in every size of firm, in every sector of the economy. So obviously, it's difficult to recruit. So like I said, we all want to recruit somebody with 10 years of experience, but the labor force have changed. The labor market is very different now. So that's part of the new reality, to hire people right out of school and to bring them. I even heard from a client recently, it was a technician, and they will take them to give them some training during school, and in order to keep them when they graduate. So people are so desperate to get people that they will actually hire them part-time or for a session during the school where they need training to make sure that when they graduate, they have built a relationship with them. So I think it's a solution for every size of firm, everybody.
I guess along with that, we are seeing a rise in programs promoting and supporting experiential learning. But should post-secondary institutions be more proactive in teaching employment skills and some of those soft skills? Should we be investing more into some community college programs to produce these types of skills?
Definitely. And I think for years, I've been an economist for a long time. When I was in school, we were looking at programs to create jobs. So for years, government were focusing on helping with different programs to help the economy to create jobs. I work in, when I graduated, my first job was in New Brunswick, in Fredericton, and I worked for the government. And I worked on a program. It was a job creation program. And the focus was on Kent County and other county where they have more higher unemployment rate. So that's what government have been doing for years. Now, the challenge is different. We don't need to create jobs. We need to help people to upscale their skills for the jobs that we have. So government has really to shift and to really help people who need to be retrained. The economy is changing very rapidly. We use now a lot of technology in our processes, in our companies. So to be able to use technology when you work is becoming very important. So I think the challenge for government in the next decade is going to help people retrain, to upgrade their skills, to be able to continue to have a job or to find a job. And I think that's the biggest challenge we're going to have as for governments.
Mhm. So when you talk about governments and immigration levels, what should we expect in terms of a time frame to get back to the pre-COVID immigration levels here in Atlantic Canada?
The way I understand it, when I talk to government officials, is 2022, we should be back to the pre-crisis level. And also the federal government, the Canadian government, has a goal to increase the level of immigration across the country. So the basically, not only we should go back to the pre-crisis level, but actually in the next 5 years, the level of immigration will probably increase more than in the past. The government realized the need for new workers, and they are trying to increase the level of immigration. One way they are doing it, a lot of people are coming to Canada to study, and in every part of the country, they want to double the number of international students because they realize research is showing that it's actually the best source of immigration for the job market. People are coming here, they are studying in our community college and universities, and when they stay, actually they are perfect for the job market. So there's a number of strategies to increase the number of people coming from outside. And unfortunately, we had a setback in 2020, 2021 because of the pandemic, but it should come back to normal in 2022.
One of the things that's come in one of our questions, how do you see the issue of affordable housing or housing in general intersecting with the labor crunch?
This is a very good question. It's not an easy question because it's two problems or two challenges, I would say. First, interest rate has been very low, so the price of housing has been increasing everywhere, which is good if you have a house. You know, if you own a house, you're richer today than a year ago. But if you're young and you don't have a house, and you're thinking about buying a house in the next 10 years, obviously the market is very difficult. And on top of it, we know that immigration is a big source of demand for the housing market. It's one of the reasons why before the pandemic, housing prices were increasing. A good example of that is PEI, where they had a program to attract more people from outside the country, and they really had a housing boom because of that. So this is a challenge for governments. We want to attract these people. We want to welcome these people, but at the same time, we also want to keep the housing market affordable for our young or our next generation. So I think we were going to see more programs from the government to help people to have access to a house, because it's with low interest rate, price went up, and with demand that we're going to build with more immigration, well, the housing price is just going to go up again. So I think we're going to see it's going to become a policy issue in many parts of the country.
Especially here in New Brunswick, where we also face the issue of double taxation on rental properties. So it's a bigger challenge here than it might be in other jurisdictions. So
it's more difficult to build a house for rent, I guess, if you have.
Yeah, developers don't necessarily want to develop as many properties because they are taxed at twice the residential rate. Something that's recently come to our attention when you talk about the international student retention and engaging them in the employment market through experiential learning and those sorts of things, we've learned that international students are asked to confirm on their applications that they intend to return home to their home country when they're applying for a student visa. How do you address that contradiction?
That's a type of issues that we will have to look at. If the federal government, sometimes between the objective and the reality, there's a gap. And this is a good example of that. And I think they will have to revisit that if they want to achieve their goal to double the number of students and to keep them here. If they want to make it easier to keep them here, they will have to change a few things. And that's definitely one thing that they have to change.
Well, I will let you know that at the recent Canadian Chamber Conference, this was a policy resolution of the Fredericton Chamber and supported by others in Atlantic Canada, that adjustment needed to be made. So that's now part of the National Chamber platform of advocacy to the federal government. So we're working on it. But
well, that's very good, because actually, it's a good way to attract people and to keep them here, because we have a great education system in Canada. So when people are going through this education system, they are in much better shape to be to benefit from the job market than if they come directly from outside the country. So this is a great way to help.
Questions just come in through the chat that says, how can we encourage SMEs that they need to take the time, which they often feel they don't have, to learn about the strategies that support the need to do and think about things differently, and then prioritize to implement those changes?
That's a very good question as well. That's the challenge of most entrepreneurs, is they are so busy in the operation of their business that sometimes they forget to manage their business, or they don't have enough time to manage their business. I think that's, we just released yesterday a new report on merger and acquisition. And we were surprised. We wanted to know if the pandemic have changed things. And actually, there's a lot of business transition right now, even during the pandemic. But something that changed is the motivation to acquire another business. And the motivation of acquiring talent has increased significantly. And the motivation to acquire technology has increased significantly as well. So many entrepreneurs are realizing the challenge, and they're finding ways. And for some of them, the right way is actually to make an acquisition of another business with great talent, and businesses that have already adopted technology and it's working well. So there's different ways. I don't know how you make entrepreneurs to reflect on this, but what I can see is entrepreneurs are very resilient. We saw that during the pandemic. And I think they will find ways to face this challenge that we have a shortage of labor. Sometimes strategy that we didn't even think about, like, for example, buying another business to make sure that they have enough specialized people to work for them.
One of the things you mentioned was a more professional or organized hiring process from the SMEs. So is that something that SMEs should be doing themselves, or do you think it would be better for them to engage an HR consultant or an HR firm to help them with that work?
I think both ways work, and but the most important part is to do it. So if you don't have the time to do it yourself, or if you don't have the resources internally, it's a good idea to look outside. But what is important, what we realize, is the job market is so tight that if you are not doing the right thing, meaning if you're not visible on social media to advertise, if you're not selling your business, market your business as a good employer, is like explain how flexible, what you do that is differentiate yourself compared to others, you're not going to hire people, because a lot of businesses are looking for people. So now people have the choice. So that's the reason why we say we find that businesses who are taking action to have a more formalized hiring process, well, they do better. So like you said, we can do it, and you can do it internally, or you can ask a consultant to help you to do that. But it's important to do it differently, because the job market is quite different now.
Being an employer of choice sounds like it's really the next wave, or being important. And that doesn't probably mean having a foosball table, which we saw a few years ago. but you talked about mentoring. So tell me about the survey results that focused on that mentoring piece.
Well, the new generation is different. They are looking not only for a job, they're looking for a purpose. They want to feel important. And it's important for employers to understand that. It's important to not only to give them a job and a salary and some benefits, but also to engage them inside the company. And coaching, mentoring, training is very valued by the new generation. They like to they love to learn, they want to learn, and it's important for employers to give them the ability to grow. So this is, like I said, is a total compensation package. It's not only salary. Often entrepreneurs are going into the salary, increasing salary, because it's the easiest way to do it. But at the same time, it's not only what people are looking for. They are looking for the full package. So it's important to look at different angle of the package that you offer.
One of the things that you mentioned in that full package is flexible work arrangements. And there's a question that I keep hearing is, do you think that the rise of remote work, which can be considered a benefit or a flexible arrangement, do you think that's an advantage or a disadvantage to New Brunswick, given that we can have people from anywhere in the world working remotely for New Brunswick businesses, but New Brunswick people can work for businesses elsewhere also? So what's the balance there?
I think two things. I think what we see in our research, this is not going to go away. Technology has really improved, and the pandemic has proved to many businesses that it's possible to work remotely and be very efficient. In a previous research, 74% of Canadian businesses were saying there's going to be some remote work at the end of this crisis in my business. I'll give you an example. I was on a panel with manufacturers, and the CEO was saying that before the pandemic, we had 0 person working from home. There was nobody in my shop working from home. During the pandemic, there was actually 40% of his people working from home. Everybody like HR, finance, everybody who could work from home, they were working from home because of the pandemic. So he said, at the end of this crisis, I'm not sure what is going to be the percentage, but definitely it's not going to be 0. It's going to be much higher than that because the job market have changed. So that's the first point. I think the job market has really changed. And in terms of is it a benefit for New Brunswick? I would say yes, because what we find during the pandemic, a lot of people want to have a better quality of life. People are tired to work in big cities and commute for an hour in the morning and commute for an hour at night. So they're looking for a better quality of life place to stay. And I think New Brunswick offer that. And I think there's a lot of benefits I'm sure you will see more and more people working from New Brunswick for companies in Toronto, Montreal, or Vancouver, because they can do it remotely now. So companies are hiring people who are in a remote area because they're looking for people. But the other way around is working as well. People who want to have a great quality of life but continue to work, they have the ability to do it. Not in every in every job, but in many jobs you can do that.
A question about some of the underrepresented groups in the workforce. Indigenous youth, people with disabilities. What supports do you think are needed, either from government or from the businesses themselves, to get more of these individuals into the workforce?
I'm not sure what kind of support, but definitely we need to be more open-minded about that. In the previous study that we did, unfortunately, we realized that entrepreneurs or business people are not very open to people who are different. And so I think we need just to be more open-minded. There's a lot of good people with disabilities or part of a subgroup that have difficulties to find a job just because they look different or they have a different color. And there's a lot of well-educated very talented people there. So we really need to look at the job market differently. And I think it starts with our own perception more than, I'm sure the government program can help, but the first thing I would say is our own perception.
Mhm. I have another question that's come in the chat, and I'm just going to read it. Another challenge for newcomers in Greater Moncton, and I will add in, this is the same challenge in Fredericton, St. John, and throughout the province, especially those seeking work that has non-traditional hours like nights and weekends, is transportation. Public transportation is limited in hours, it's limited in scope. What should be done about that? Should we expect to have a more robust public transportation system in our small communities?
I think, this is a very interesting question. I think things will change because the country and with many other countries have committed themselves to reduce our carbon footprint. And the biggest actually contribution to our emission is transportation. It's the fact that in Canada, we like our cars and trucks, and we use a lot of them. If we want to reduce carbon footprint, we will have to reduce our use of cars and have more public transportation. So I would believe that public transportation is going to be a major issue in the next decade. In this reflection about what should we do to reduce our carbon footprint. We have committed ourselves to specific target for 2030 and 2050. So the federal government with provincial governments are going to look at different strategies to achieve these goals. And like I said, we cannot achieve these goals without rethinking transportation. And I think when we rethink transportation, public transportation is going to be a big factor. If we want to, if we use that to commute more, it's one way to reduce our emissions. So I think I'm pretty positive that this is going to be part of our reflection, our thinking about how can we reduce our carbon footprint.
I have a question next that's, I guess, related to the pandemic and what's been happening with the labor market during the pandemic. What effect do you think that CERB or EI has had on labor markets? And do you think it's lingering? What's the next steps in that regard?
Well, I think, the government put this program in place because many Canadians lost their job. And I think these programs were necessary. There's a lot of questions about where the program kept too long or longer than necessary. Well, this program, the program that everybody was talking about has ended on, I think it was October 23rd. Mm-hmm. So it's over now. What we see is the participation rate, the number of Canadians working, is actually the same as before the crisis. So it's not like people are staying home on these programs now because the 19.1 million Canadians who used to work before the pandemic, they are back to the job market. So I'm not sure that this program had a huge impact on shortage of labor. The biggest issue is the fact that we have this aging population. The baby boomers, there was a lot of them. So when they enter the job market 30 years ago, well, we had, a lot of people. And I don't know if you remember, the unemployment rate in Canada was very high. Like when I graduated as an economist, the unemployment rate in Canada was 12%. I mean, this is like, that was the challenge for economists, was to find programs to create jobs. Now these baby boomers who are very high volume, they are all around 65. Some are already gone in retirement, and many of them are going to retire in the next 5 years. So this basically the biggest issue about the aging population is this group of people. So in 10 years, when all the baby boomers are gone, well, the situation is going to improve. With also on top of it, immigration, and we have our birth rate is slightly increasing, which is going to help. So the biggest problem for us is the next 5 to 10 years. After that, we should be in a better shape.
We have just under 10 minutes left. I have a couple of more questions I want to ask you, and then I'll be turning it over to Dean Mullen. But I just wanted to give you a heads up on timing. One question that I have is, how can the public sector, the private sector, and education sectors work better together to help resolve some of these challenges?
I think it's important to look at the needs of the job market, and the need is to help people who are outside the job market because they don't have the skills, to help them to retrain. People who are the new generation, they are, okay, because they all are tech savvy and they function very well with technology. My biggest concern is people who are older and that was not part of their life. The jobs are changing. It's almost impossible to find a job now that there's no use of technology. So this is where they can really work together and help people to retrain. Is it inside businesses with the help of the government? Is it to help people to go for training, specific training? I don't know what is the solution, but that's really where they can help working together.
One of the things that I often hear from our chamber members is that they find it very challenging to compete with the public sector for employees. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, and I know a lot of people won't like me here, but I think the public sector should rethink the number of people working for them. I think these, when we had a lot of people looking for a job, having big ministries was maybe the right thing to do, but they should free up some of the labor force for the private sector. I think they should have a strategy to reduce the size of their department. I'm not saying that hospitals should hire less people. Obviously, these in the healthcare, a lot of people are offering services that they directly to people, but there's a lot of people in ministries who can work on reducing the number of people, especially in this context where the private sector need more people. So I think the government should rethink their strategy about their labor force.
We'll share your thoughts with them. Thank you. One last question. Our next meeting after this one of my chamber colleagues is with Nancy Healy, and she's the Commissioner for Employers for EI. And as you know, there's a consultation process happening with EI reform. If you were to tell us a message to give her to share on behalf of employers, what do you think is the most important piece with regards to EI reform?
Well, I think is to adapt to the new reality of the labor force. And one thing is to help people to retrain. I think that's really what we need to do. There's a lot of jobs out there. So the need for supporting people who doesn't have a job have changed. And we should really make it easier for people to upgrade their skills. I think we should focus on that.
Thank you. We will share that as well. My job was to do the Q&A with you, and I really appreciate your answers. They were really excellent. I think we got through all the questions. I know a couple of people did comment that they were looking for copies of the study, the report, the PowerPoint. And so I understand that you're going to make those available to us to share out to those who attended the session today. So
yes, we can. We'll send you the PowerPoint so you can share with your members, and the report is accessible on our website at bdc.ca.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, I'm going to turn the session over to Dean Mullen, Chair of the St. John Chamber, and he's going to more formally thank you and close the event. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Krista. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Pierre Cleroux on behalf of our chambers and the business community for taking the time to speak with us today. I know I found it very informative and greatly appreciated the detail that you went into, and it has definitely given us all something to take away and see how it can be incorporated and integrated into our businesses for our own search for talent. Thank you as well to our colleagues from Fredericton and Moncton. And again, a special thank you to the Business Development Bank of Canada, BDC, for providing us an opportunity to host Pierre. It is truly appreciated. It's always informative and great to get updated on these items. As tomorrow is November 11th, I encourage everyone to take some time to remember and pay tribute to those who have and are currently serving. Thank you for all you do. We will remember. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe and have a great day. Bye now.
Thank you.